Hey, Mariah.
Hi, Monique.
Hi. Now, I don't know about you, but are you kind of sensing and feeling that this is like crazy chaotic times that we're in right now?
Yes.
Like the whole atmosphere is like, oh, what the heck is going on in the United States of America?
Yeah, there is a
Yeah.
WTF situation on our hands that is escalating daily.
Yeah, I think that this is worth taking a pause and doing a podcast episode about how to like get manage or I don't know. You had some
How
thoughts
to
on ideas.
survive. Yeah,
Yes.
how to
Function.
manage yourself, manage your nervous system when the whole world seems to be on fire.
Dumpster
Sometimes
fire.
literally. Yeah. And you're stuck. Like some of the places you might have previously gone to ground yourself, like watching the evening news,
Yeah.
that's just not cutting it.
No.
So what can we do about that?
Yes.
I think this is a really important topic for us to dive
Agreed.
into.
And as a poli-sci major, I am so glad you're here
Yeah.
because I think you have a great, unique perspective. So let's go.
Welcome to Heart and Soul, the podcast where we empower and inspire women to lead their best lives, harnessing the power of their hearts and souls. We are Mariah
And Monique.
your hosts and guides on this journey of self-discovery and personal growth.
In each episode, we will dive deep into topics that matter most to you, from self-love and confidence to career development, relationships, and everything in between. We believe that every woman has a unique strength and inner wisdom waiting to be unleashed.
Join us as we cover insightful heart and soul-centered topics and interview incredible women who've overcome challenges, chased their dreams, and found their true purpose. Through all of this, you will discover practical tips, strategies, and real-life stories to help you navigate life's twists and turns.
For whatever season of life you're in, this podcast is your safe space to explore, learn, grow, and possibly even laugh and cry with us. So grab your headphones, maybe your favorite drink, and we'll embark on this transformative journey together.
With heart, I'm Mariah.
And with soul, I'm Monique.
So I would like to say I could have predicted this is exactly what was going to happen in January 2025 based on the outcome of the last presidential election. But I think even I had some tiny, tiny sliver of hope that we would not immediately dive into chaos. But we did.
Yes.
And, we're a couple months in and it's an everyday, like,
it's a circus.
What the fuck? And
yes.
I know we'll sit around the dinner table with my family and it's just did you hear this? Did you hear this? And it's from all the different news sources, everybody has something salacious to share.
Yeah, both sides of the table.
It's everywhere.
Mhm.
And it, at the end of the day, is really hard on our nervous systems. This kind of chaos, this is hard on individuals. And especially when you might have relied on the foundations of your government, the foundations of just like what you believe to be true in your world to give you grounding.
That's interesting because when you're saying that, I was thinking about like how a building is built.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've been in real estate. Like you need like these strong pillars. And our government for a lot of us has been a strong pillar
of stability.
And it doesn't feel that way right now for me.
Well, as a girl who used to carry a copy of the Constitution in her backpack in high school because I was a super government nerd, that was such a foundation for me. It's the thing I didn't doubt, that my nation was, founded on the right pillars and that the way that we put it together was, the perfect checks and balances.
Yes.
Like I truly was bought into all of that. So now to have that on the daily rattled and to suddenly feel like I'm not sure how this is going to work out, right?
The things I knew aren't that way.
Destabilizing.
Yes.
And that's not just in our country, but how that affects us around the world too. And so I think that it was important in this conversation to just honor and acknowledge
where we're at.
Yeah. Like, how are you feeling? Struggling, right? I don't know what to make of this. I don't know how to sort out what I'm hearing. I don't know what's real, what's serious, what's fluff. Like sifting through it is really hard because
there's so much.
The news sources are so fractured, and every single one has its own angle and you know, and motive, right? And so we're all just sort of swirling in a chaos, trying to figure out, how do I just get through the day, right? What do I do? And that's what I wanted to focus on in the episode is like, you know, acknowledge what's like, there's obviously something going on
here.
And
there's probably not a lot we can talk about it ad nauseum, but that's not what our thing is. We want to give you practical tips to help you manage living in this crazy, chaotic time.
What can you actually do about it? And what I wanted to share is just that at the end of the day, all you can control is yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes that's doubtable.
Yeah, and that's its own battle.
No kidding.
But you need to focus in these times of chaos. If you find yourself hearing something and spiraling and feeling like you're on shaky ground, I want people to literally ground themselves in identifying what can you control.
Yes.
Where do you have agency?
Yes.
What are the pieces of this where you can share your voice and feel that you can establish any amount of control? Because that's going to help ground you. And that even is as simple as like, I can get myself into the woods where I can connect with nature, and that grounding will help me then receive the next bit of news. These are the types of things we need to be doing right now. And I want people to know too, I learned this at a really early age as a super government nerd, that truly the most important government in your lives is what's happening in your hometown. It's what's happening on your city council.
This is good to
your
know.
School board, your county boards, your state. It builds up from there. At the end of the day, like, get involved in your community. That is truly like where your kids are educated. Like so much does land at the state's discretion. And so just even allowing yourself to think about that, like, okay, where am I right now? And if you're not aligning and feeling like the place that you live is safe, start by fixing that, right? Because how do you fix the big picture? Truly, you can't. Your vote matters. And you know, maybe the election didn't turn out the way that you wanted when you voted this time, but then get involved next time in driving the vote. But at the end of the day, like what matters most is where your local politics are happening. So maybe if you're destabilized every day in your home area, maybe there's a sign there that it's time to think about where else could you live, right? If that's an option to explore other options. But just what can you control? That is the most important thing. Maybe this is bringing up issues in other relationships that you have, friendships, marriage, where
so many people are divided right now.
You don't share.
Right.
Well, maybe that's what you can control is if this relationship is not working because you cannot see eye to eye on something, you maybe need to surround yourself with people that are, you know, better for your nervous system, better for the conversation. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be taking opposing viewpoints. We need to be talking to each other. But you also have to find places where you feel safe and you can feel grounded and supported and heard. And that might just not be where you're currently hanging out.
Well, it reminds me what you're saying. So first of all, when you're talking about like going into the woods and, you know, like recharging and resting really in your own way. I was just like, I felt myself kind of come down. Because like when we were first talking, I was like, oh my gosh, the fluttery energy that's going around right now. And then I felt myself calm down. And then also when you were just talking, it reminded me that like, we do need to hear opposing views, but we need to be open-minded to each other and not closed-minded, because this is dividing us because we're allowing ourselves to become so divided and like go into your corners versus we're not that far apart. We just need to talk about it with an open mind and not think we need to convert the other person or you know, because then that de-escalates like, I must win. I must win. I must win. It's not about winning. It's about finding a mutual respect for each other. Because that makes me just go, oh yeah, I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to win. I can just respect where they're at and they're going to respect where I'm at. That makes me feel so much better. Talk about a nervous system.
But then from there, building on that, take charge of your own life.
Right.
And if where you are is not working for you, find other options.
Yes.
And I know that sounds sort of like tough love and maybe harsh. Like maybe other options are not immediate and available to you, but start dreaming of them. Dreaming of the future and of a better,
the way you want to see it,
a better outcome.
Okay.
Is going to be. It's just like manifesting, right?
Right.
Like if you don't like the situation you're in, then dream up a vision you can manifest to get to the next, place that you're supposed to be.
Right.
And I think that is just something that as I think about, again, how to live through the chaos, it's to plant your feet on the ground where you're aligned. And it's to stick to your own values, your own core values. Like to survive chaos is not to just give up on everything you care about. It's to double down on everything you care about and to be really clear on your core values. This, as I'm saying it out loud, makes me think so much of how I navigate wedding planning with a couple.
Okay.
Because it's going to be a chaotic swirl. Like from the time they get engaged
so much emotions
till the end of the wedding night,
yes.
we are going to be in a swirl of chaos. It's going to feel like a tornado.
Yes.
And I am there to say to them, ground yourself in your core values and what's most important to you on the wedding day. If you can do that while all of this is flying around you, you won't feel the pull. You won't get caught up in the chaos. Beautiful. And so I think about that same thing for, somebody who's feeling drawn into the swirl and the chaos of turning on the news right now. Ground yourself in your values and then do something about it. Reach out to, your representatives through your local government.
Volunteer.
Share your voice, educate. Like the best way to feel better is to actually do something, like physically do something to live in your values. And I think that's just something like funny. It's maybe a little even different than I thought we were going to share on the episode today, but I'm really passionate about this fact because it's not going to make you feel better to do nothing. You're just going to ride in the swirl. And that chaotic energy is just going to continue to make you feel destabilized. But getting clear on what is important to you, what your values are, and finding anything to do about that fact is going to make you feel grounded. Your groundedness is going to reverberate to others, and you're going to begin to see a path out for yourself. And it's not selfish to focus on yourself. It's actually selfless. And that's, oh my gosh, we could have a whole other episode on that topic. But if you can stay grounded, you will then attract the people that are aligned. And together you can be a force for what you believe in. And I think there's plenty of amazing humans out there that aren't that far apart from you. Right? And that's, I totally believe in that. And they might hold opposing
views. And they're not that far apart.
But you might actually find out you share some very common values.
Yes.
At the end of the day, your values align. How you're talking about it is just sounding different.
You and I have had this conversation when we've traveled together overseas, how it's so different in the United States a lot of times of how people talk about politics and how they talk about politics in Europe.
Yeah.
Because everyone is so different in Europe. They've just learned to live with so many differences and be curious and talk openly about the differences and the similarities.
Oh, for hours on end.
And they are not charged about it.
Right.
Sometimes they are charged about it. I shouldn't say they're not charged about it. But it's been my experience that they're highly educated, highly curious, and just actually want to understand your perspective without judgment.
Right.
Now think about that. Like if we could come to the table in a polarized time, which we're in, a very chaotic time. And I believe this chaos is being put on us on purpose to distract us, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Yep.
But at a very chaotic time, if we could come with curiosity and non-judgment with each other, maybe they wouldn't have so much control over us.
Yeah. In essence, when you look at the big picture, this is not an accident. This isn't
Right.
This isn't just happening.
Didn't happen in a vacuum.
There is intention in the chaos that's being created.
Yes.
And so ever more important that we find our ground.
And they've been doing it over there for years in Europe. So why can't we also use these same skills?
They've had to live through some things that, I always think when I travel of how ancient some of the cultures and nations that we visit are, right? Like when you're standing in ancient Rome and you're thinking about all the life that was lived there and everything they went through and all the chapters, and you realize how young of a nation the United States is, that's actually sobering in its own way because we just aren't necessarily a people that have lived through all of that ancestrally in the same way. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a controversial thing to say.
Well, I believe
we certainly, we as a nation are just not that old.
Yes,
the bottom line, that's just the truth. And
developmentally, we haven't reached areas that
run
other
through some of the cycles of,
right.
Democracy. Again, getting into the political theory of it all. But there's just a lot that we haven't collectively experienced. So we're going to, it's inevitable. We're going to go through some of it. And if you look at history and you hear stories of how people survived through difficult times, they held their faith. They found the ground.
Yep.
They took care of themselves. They held their people close and they aligned with people who shared their values because they then could be a force for what they believed was the right path. Whether you believe it's the same as someone else's path, it's neither here nor there.
Right.
The bottom line is you need to find your own alignment internally. And
I love that.
I think that's what I just want to share with people today. When you're, if you used to use the Today Show as a way to start your morning and you turn it on now and you don't even know what's happening.
It's like Trigger Central now.
Yeah. I was a news junkie. I love to binge on CNN or, if there's a big event happening, I'm I find my comfort in just turning on the news. And I'm not even able to do that anymore. And I just find okay, I really need I need a reminder myself about what to do in these times. And it's what can I control? Where do I put my feet in the ground?
Mm-hmm.
And does that align with me? I'm thankful that I live in a place where I feel, for the most part, aligned.
Yes.
My city, my county, my state, pretty much on the same page. There may be things here and there where I'm I don't know about that, but pretty much feeling good about it. If I were waking up in a different state right now, and I've even thought about this with my own children going to college, I'd have to think about how I might control or what my future plans might look like in choosing to live somewhere I'm more aligned. I've thought about that with young daughters. I don't really want to send them to a state that has some very strict policies that are not in favor of women's bodies, right?
Right.
Heaven forbid.
Right.
I've literally had to have that chat with them.
Yeah.
And that's not to limit their opportunities, but to say you have to find where you're aligned, and where how I've raised them.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't necessarily be in alignment. And we're all going to have to make some hard choices about what works. And that can come to relationships too. Maybe there's people in your life and often these people are your parents, not in my case, thankfully, but I hear a lot of horror stories about
how divided,
I was just listening to one on a podcast where it was I don't even know my dad anymore. He's been radicalized and I don't know who he is. That's really tough.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to protect yourself too.
Right.
And you have to ground yourself in okay, what do you know?
Well, it's kind of like I was saying, it rattles when it's your parent or when it's your country. And these were the foundational pieces of which you built your thought structure, your life structure on, and then it completely changes. What do you have? I believe you use not autonomy. The word you use is your own whatever. But it is your own autonomy.
Yeah,
That's
is.
Your own agency.
Agency. Yep.
That's the thing you have. That is pretty much all you have because your foundation is kind of changing, adapting, I'll say crumbling around you.
Yep.
But you still have you. You still have agency to make your own choices, your own decisions, to decide to take care of yourself.
Yep.
to go out in nature, to nurture that nervous system that's on fire, to push the channel and turn off the news and not be like sucked into
put down the phone
to the chaos.
Yeah. You have until your final breath, what you know you have is yourself and the agency to choose how you live every day.
Right.
And that's the thing that you need to cling to right now. And getting clear on your own values, being curious, asking hard questions, having those, deeply curious conversations with people who believe something different than you. Like, I just want to understand right now. Non-judgmental.
Yes. Right.
I literally have thought, put me in a room with a bunch of Trumpers. Like, I kind of just want to ask them some questions. Like, I just want to understand, like, what am I missing? What am I missing?
Remember I told you when I was in South Africa not that long ago, this was right after President Trump took office, and they were really curious about him, and they had a lot of preconceived ideas and notions about him that I didn't feel were accurate. And I kept asking them, where are you getting your news from?
Right.
Because I don't feel like you're getting the whole story, or at least you're not getting the story as I understand it.
Yep.
So I would explain to them like the news how I understood it. And it was so vastly different. So it's just so amazing how polarized and how everything is so different. So that's when I was like, oh, they're actually curious. They want my opinion.
Yes.
They're not judging me. They hold completely different thoughts and ideas than I do.
Based on what they've been fed.
Yes, as they should, right? As we all are. But they were really non-judgmental. And I loved that, like just holding that energy. But it was very challenging because I felt like missed opportunity. Like maybe they,
Yeah, you wanted to educate them and be like,
right. But I didn't want to convert them either, because that's not fair, right? But to your point, like I just want to get them in a room and be like, why do you believe the way you believe? Seriously, not because like I'm going to maybe change my mind or because like I think you're right or whatever, but how did you come to this determination? Where are the facts?
Right. And my experience has shown so far that we are just consuming very different facts and have been for a very long time. And I think that's a whole wormhole, right?
Right.
As this is obviously a very complicated conversation. But I think that we felt it was important to address like what we're here, like what we're living through. Right now. Yep. And I just came back from a conference and every single conversation started with what's going on in the world. Every single one. And we couldn't even focus on the reason we were there, which is to talk about our businesses.
Wow.
Because we were stuck on, do I even have, is there even going to be a business in 6 months from now with, what I'm fearing or how things that are happening and I'm hearing about. And
that's scary. Destabilizing.
It was destabilizing. And so all I could do in those moments, in those conversations was ground myself and go, I can't let this chaos start to swirl around me and take me off my focus. I have to just continue to apply what I have learned and what I know and my own resilience to decide that whatever happens, I'm going to navigate through. Like that's the one thing I know. When we've lived through the pandemic 5 years ago, which is oddly feeling similar right now. It's like a different kind of pandemic. I now know I have that experience under my belt. Okay. I did it. I survived. I'm still alive and thriving, right?
Yes.
So what did I learn that time? What am I going to, apply into the future? Yeah. Tap into my wisdom, hold strong in my values, and just one day at a time, keep going.
Yeah.
But we need that reminder.
We do. And yeah, I do think, you and I don't always talk on we don't talk about politics. We really want to empower people with business or with life and give them practical tips and tools. But we would be remiss to not say, hey, we're all feeling the swirl. Yeah. We're all feeling the chaos. How about we just take a sacred pause and rest, restore, recharge, do what you can with what you feel you can do. If it is get involved in your local, government or, at smaller even scales, volunteering, whatever it is. And it could not be that. Maybe it's just eating a good meal and watching a comedy. Like that might be that might be me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But however it is crazy, but also like take care of yourself, because that's really, well, yes, it seems so big and so much. It starts at home, doesn't it?
100%. And it's like we have said all along in our mastermind group and the work we've done with Heart and Soul is we're about the whole person.
Yes.
Whether you're a businesswoman or a wife and a mother, like those two things are interconnected. And so we've always wanted to honor, like talking about all of the things that make up
all
you.
the parts. Mm-hmm.
And the world that you're living in is part of those parts.
So true.
Right? Like you're going to be experiencing things, whether you can predict them or not. Sometimes they're just plain natural disasters.
Right.
I've lived through that. Like that's all outside of your control. So it's just always good to have that reminder to like come back to your own groundedness and just one little thing at a time. Find something that feels true to yourself.
And I do feel like chaos is part of life. In a lot of mythological stories, chaos is used to destroy something and tear it down before new seeds can be planted. But so I feel like it is cyclical, right? Like chaos. So we can talk about the chaos that's going on now, and then we could talk about it in 5 more years as well.
These are going to be something different.
Yeah, these are just tend to yourself no matter what. Tend to your family and your tribe and your collective no matter what. Like take care of yourself, because this is just unfortunately par for the course.
On that note, I feel like that's a good place to end. I hope that this has been helpful to people who've maybe been trying to express these thoughts or feelings and just needed a little bit of encouragement today. And I do also just encourage anybody who needs that extra support to send us a message and share with us how you're feeling, because we hear you, we see you, and we all just need to be lifting each other up and supporting each other today and every day.
I agree. That's such a great point. Thank you.
Cheers, friends. You've just finished another episode of the Heart and Soul podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed the show, and if you've loved it, we would love if you'd leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening. You can find links to leave that review in the show notes, where you'll also find other resources that we reference on our show. And if you think a friend could find value in today's episode or any future episodes, please share this episode with them on social media. This is one of the only ways the podcast can organically grow, and we just can't wait to connect with you and all of your besties. You can also find Monique and I on our many social media platforms or our websites, and we're going to leave links to those in the show notes as well. Thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing our hearts and souls with you again next time. With Heart, I'm Mariah.
And with Soul, I'm Monique.